All right, always fun, delight, honored, and inspired to have our next guest with us today. Father Seraphim's with us today. He's the Archbishop of the St. Innocents Orthodox Church here in Southern Oregon. And every time we have you on, Father Seraphim, we rerun this on YouTube. And it goes viral. People just love it. People check you out all over the world. Yeah. Nice to have you. How are you?
Not bad. Really not bad.
Well, you're looking good.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks for coming in. You know, we've had various ministers in on the subject. How do we stop the spiritual decline in America? I mean, that's the broad subject of what we're doing. And sometimes you get off on individual issues, and I don't mean to do that, but there seems to be, we seem to have lost our spiritual way in America. And I don't know if I'm even expressing that right, but do you feel it? Do you sense it?
Yes, I do. Let me correct something. I'm not Archbishop, never.
Oh.
Archpriest.
Archpriest, yeah. I'm sorry. Okay.
No.
Okay.
But
Archpriest.
Do I feel it? I think anyone that wants to be close to Christ can sense something lacking.
Right.
And that's a huge question. It's going to take somebody much closer to God than I am. Not a theologian necessarily, no. Not someone with a doctorate in psychology, no. It's going to take someone or some people that really want to press into Christ and get that answer from Him. I think, Perry, you know, just for example, driving down this morning, I drive by a church by where I live, and they got a marquee. Number one, what churches have marquees for? I don't know. They want to copy the world there too. I guess that's part of the problem. And number one, that's part of the problem. We don't have to copy the world. We don't have to have big marquees. That's what we're doing. We're copying the world. Number two, I read what they had to say on there. New and exciting. Come Sunday, new and exciting. People are tired of new and exciting. When we, and there are approximately 200 of us former evangelical pastors, when we discovered ancient Orthodox Christianity, we had a war cry, and we still have it. Nothing new and nothing novel. And I think you said it. What are the old ways? You know, I'm 1,000 years older than you. I just look a little bit younger than you. But we need to go back to the old ways. Even your church. I used to be part of that church, and I love it. But I can tell you, it's not the same.
No,
it's not the same. I can remember Thursday night, what they call prayer meetings. Mm-hmm. We prayed, and we prayed, and we prayed.
Right.
And we prayed, and we cried, and we cried, and we prayed, and we prayed, and we cried, and we cried, and we prayed until we prayed through.
Yeah.
And they had a teaching of holiness. Well, maybe we got a little bit under the law a little bit, but that might be part of the answer.
Well, there seems to be now oddly enough, out of this confusion, if I can use that word, or this fog, comes a little bit of a spiritual awareness, research, that we lost something along the way.
Yeah.
Something along the way was lost, and here we are with all of our big crowds and zero cultural influence. We're just not changing things. It's like we've all almost forfeited the responsibility of being salt and light. We've given it up to something else because we're not changing. We're having great crowds, we're having great meetings, we're getting together, and we're hearing great preaching, but we're not changing the culture. Something is missing, and people are waking up. One of the calls we get here is, I've never had to defend my faith before. Now I go to the water cooler at work and I got to defend what I believe. And all of a sudden I'm starting to ask the question is, what is it do I really believe?
That's why in the Orthodox Church we recite what we believe every Sunday. the Nicene Creed, and it explains it exactly what you believe. We use the word one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. You probably won't go along with that 100%, but and we recite it loud, and we recite it with tears even, because this is what we.
Well, the word Catholic
believe.
there doesn't mean Catholic
Catholic
Church.
means universal. It means complete and whole. It doesn't mean Rome. I should clarify that.
Right, yeah.
Not Roman. Not nothing against that either. But Perry, we just need to. When I came here 20 years ago, it was a rare thing to see an Orthodox priest. And I took a lot of abuse, mostly from Christians. They didn't understand. And okay. Someone came to my door and said, "We're having a meeting, we'd like you to come." I said, "Okay, there's about 30 people, psychiatrists, psychologists, so on and so forth, teachers, former teachers, nurses. Every one were former Christians that were totally turned off from church. Totally. And these were not dumb people. I thought, what, this in this town? And this has been 20 years ago. And the only thing I could think of to say was, forgive me for all the harm the church has done to you. It starts with me saying, yes, not the church, not the church. Christ started the church and it's perfect. Now we call it the Orthodox Church, one holy Catholic and Apostolic Orthodox Church. The church hasn't changed. The same liturgy that you would go to Sunday, you're going to go to a wedding pretty soon, I understand.
Yeah.
It's the same way it's been performed since the 4th century, probably before. Nothing new, nothing novel. I think, Perry, when we stop trying to compete with the world, and that's that billboard this morning. I don't want to pick on the person, probably a better minister than I'll ever be. But why? Why bring the world into the church? Why?
Well, we chase the trends. I think we're guilty of that. I just read an article. In fact, I passed it on to Paulina to pass on to you. And it deals with millennials. Millennials are the
young ones,
17 to 30, somewhere in there. And here's the interesting thing. They're saying they're turned off by the church. They're not interested in going to church and being handed a latte and seeing somebody up in, skinny jeans and a T-shirt being cool. Not that that's wrong. It's just that they realize, wait a minute.
Well, excuse me. Maybe it is wrong.
Well, maybe it is, but something is out of whack here. What they are looking for is, number one, authenticity.
Yep.
And what did Jesus really say?
Let's go beyond that. How did he live? Every time we have a new denomination, a new church spring up, it's someone read the scriptures and said, this is how it should be. This is how Jesus was or is. And I believe, Perry, I'm convinced, unless we have our heroes, who are our heroes this day, really? And we have many of them in the Orthodox Church. Millions and millions that died for their faith. Some of them that are still alive after the gulags that I've met personally. Some of them that have lost their fingers and arms and because they wouldn't deny Christ. So we have our heroes. Maybe in the West, we've lost our heroes. Seriously, who are our heroes? Somebody that writes a book? Does that make you a hero? Somebody that has a doctorate in psychology? Does that make you a hero?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good question. I'm going to have to take a break here, but let me ask you this question before we do, and I'll let you ponder it while we're taking a break. It appears Christian persecution is coming to America. In fact, it's here in some levels. The Russian church went through years of persecution and survived. And the question I would have for you is, what was it? What was it that made them survive such incredible persecution? We'll be right back with Father Seraphim. Okay, we're back, and always fun and delighted to have in the studio with us today Father Seraphim Cardoza, and he is the archpriest at the St. Innocent Orthodox Church. In fact, if you're going up I-5 and you're going just before you get to Rogue River, you'll see a small little building over there with the kind of the, what do you call that?
A cupola.
Cupola top on it. Hopefully someday your new church will be built there.
God willing.
Yeah.
Maybe through your prayers, maybe.
Yeah, well, I'll pray about that. And I really hope so. So that is, a lot of people ask what that is. And I always say, well, that's Father Seraphim's future home church right there. So, yeah, but we're talking today about the spiritual decline in America and why and some things. And I've asked for his perspective on this. Russia went through an incredible time of persecution. We all know that, and the Russian church over there was tremendously persecuted. I mean, just tremendously persecuted. What, in your opinion, Father Seraphim, what saved them from total destruction?
Number one, nothing new and nothing novel. The communists tried everything. It wasn't just Russia; it was Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia. Right. You know. Nothing new and nothing novel. They actually, towards the end, they started what they called the People's Church. They wore the vestments, they had the beard, and so on and so forth. But they started making it what they thought would be easier. We'll put in pews instead of standing. We'll allow some of our bishops to be married instead of unmarried like they've been for centuries. We'll shorten the services. They wanted to make it kind of like the Western Church is doing, more people friendly. It didn't work. The old ways it's embodied in them. It's in their blood almost. And I think that's one thing. Nothing new and nothing novel. It didn't work. What preceded communism? What preceded the revolution? The church didn't become weak, because Christ said, "I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it," not them. Mm-hmm. So it, meaning the Orthodox Church, didn't change. Same services, same cycles, same time of fasting, all these things, same liturgy, all these, what the West thinks are outward, maybe unnecessary, are vehicles to transform us into some kind of humility, which is really lacking. Forgive me for saying this. It's really lacking in the Western Church. One thing that I see lacking, and you might not want me after this, is humility. There, praise the Lord, isn't Jesus good? Yeah. What kind of, something?
Well, how would you describe humility? How would you describe humility from your tradition and perspective? Because it seems to me that if a church, like in Russia, when it was persecuted, that those who went through that persecution had to have some kind of a relationship with Christ that allowed them to endure that persecution.
They did, and they had it personally. The ones that didn't give in, and many gave in. I'm going to say it again. They had their saints. They had their heroes. Every saint, my Saint Seraphim, Saint John of Shanghai and San Francisco, Saint Paisius of Mount Athos, and you could just go on and on. They all, they didn't just read the scriptures, they lived the scriptures. There was a monk who went to his abbot and he said, "I want to become a saint. I want to become." You see, I know a young man actually said that. I said, "Be careful, because the road to sainthood is lined with suffering." So the abbot said, "Okay, go find a holy man and live with him." It was passed down from generation to generation. The lives of the saints, every one of the Russian saints, Romanian saints, Bulgarian saints, Orthodox saints, it was not a life of ease. It was a life of suffering in a different sense. Because truly, if we take suffering in the right sense, it does bring us closer to Christ. Whether it's our children, whether it's our finances, whether it's our business, it brings us closer to Christ. So they had their heroes, they had their signposts. Perry, in the West, forgive me, yes, we have so-and-so, I'm thinking of Billy Graham, God bless him, huge rallies. So everybody in my era wanted to have these huge rallies. I was going to be a minister and have these huge rallies. There wasn't a whole, it was just raise your hand, accept Jesus, and everything's okay. And they found out, I found out, you found out, we found out, the more you want to be like Christ, the more you have to travel the same road that he traveled. And so, I believe, I know. For instance, our Saint Innocent from our church. You read his life, he suffered 15 years as almost starving before he even got his parish out in Siberia somewhere. Well, it's been 18 years, I'm kind of getting there. Yeah. He had tremendous suffering. He died a very holy man, miracles during and after his life. Then I'll finish this thought. Saint Innocent, uncle, was a saint. And to a saint, it means someone totally sanctified. Your church teaches sanctification. I wonder how many really are. Not for me to judge. Probably Mrs. So-and-so down the corner, the old lady in the corner. His uncle was a saint. His grandfather was a saint. You just don't say, well, he's a saint, he's in heaven. You don't do it that way. They suffered for Christ. Humility. People think I joke a lot, and I do. You put yourself beneath everybody else, and you do not believe you're better than anybody else. And if someone was to do something good to me, I would know that I didn't deserve it. I would know that. And I would right away think, how can I pay him back? Humility is something you can't teach, but find a humble person and live with them. A humble person is, in our culture, that's been equated with weak. Oh no. Oh no.
All right, back to the central question, and that is that this is not a criticism, it's just an observation, but it appears we Christians have lost our way in this country. We're not changing things. Now, sometimes that is expressed in certain issues. We're dealing with same-sex issues, we're dealing with abortion, and all that has its place. But now the next level of persecution that seems to be coming upon us is what they're calling religious freedom. That we're actually being criticized, if not legislated, and not being allowed to believe what we believe because it's counterculture. We can't seem to change anything.
We do not have any heroes. Forgive me for raising my voice.
Yeah.
All we have is someone writing a book here, or having a large church over there, or writing a book here, or getting on TV there. Where are our heroes? I want to see our heroes, at least in Orthodoxy, at least.
Yeah.
At least. And I'd love to have you go to the monastery with me sometime. It's only 3.5 hours from here. You see men that struggle. They're not perfect, but I've known some of them for 25 years, and they are my heroes. They struggle every day to be closer to Christ. And if you were asking if they knew Christ, they'd go, no, I'm unworthy. And yet you know. Where are our heroes? Perry, we've equated heroism with, I'm going to stay on this subject, for being an author of a book or having a large church. Does that make you a hero? If you look at history, some of the large churches were by heretics. Arius, that first great heresy, was by Arius. Had a huge church, very charismatic, very instrumental with his music. He was wrong. He was flat out wrong. He was flat out wrong with the two natures of Christ. He belittled our Christ. And so, again, just suppose some pastor, some manager of a station, TV station, just suppose they were to say, enough. Take your $150,000 a year, take your new car, take your housing allowance, take it. Let's go back to where we began. Let's go back to prayer and fasting. And now right away someone's going to say, okay, tell us how. Then you have your heroes. And I'm not putting down the Western heroes. Crane, Hyde, and all these fellows, you know who they are. You know their names as well as I do. I'm thinking of, from Canada. I can't think of his name now, but one of my favorite. He said this, I'll think of it in a minute. I'd be a Christian, I'd become Orthodox, but my wife wouldn't let me. To me, a hero says, I'm going to follow my heart and follow Christ no matter what. Unless you leave mother, father, sisters, brothers, lands, homes, children, wife, husband for my sake in the kingdom. And I thought, you know, I don't think you have to leave your wife or your husband or your church. But somewhere, some Christian leader has got to get off his high horse and come back down to where we are. Maybe you and I talk a lot about confession. Mm-hmm. There is not any humility without confession. I know what you're going to say, but I confess to God every day. So do I. But there's something when I bend my neck, kiss the Bible, kiss the cross, and there's a priest there, not any better than I am, but that grace that comes with the priesthood, and I confess my sins publicly. Mm-hmm. That's where a little humility comes from. After all, you're my buddy, I love you. I'm going to go to you and tell you. You probably know already, you just don't have the courage to tell me my sins. You see, Perry, it's all backwards. And it has to start with, I'm not picking on anybody with a large church or small church, but you know, somebody just asked me, when are you going to build your church in Old River? And I go, well, unless the Lord builds a house, you build in vain. Okay. And it's amazing where people are coming from to our church way out in the boondocks.
I have to do something real vain and take a break, so hold on just a second.
How much money are you going to make?
No, nothing.
Excuse
me. This is nonprofit. We'll be right back with Father Seraphim. Okay, we're back with Father Seraphim, and he is the archpriest at the St. Innocents Orthodox Church here in Southern Oregon. He's been on with us before, and the overall prevailing question today is, you know, can we stop the spiritual decline in America? And there's so many aspects to this, to Father Seraphim. I don't know if we can get it all in. We certainly can't. But when you're on this show or just in everyday life, you get a lot of correspondence from all over the place, literally all over the world, because I see the hits we get here when you're on. And I'm sure some of those emails get to you. If you were to look at them, what concerns people the most? What are they talking to you about? Is there a general theme?
Most are disappointed in their churches. And I guess I'm from Orthodox too. And I'm certainly the worst Orthodox priest. There isn't any priests that's worse than me. But most of them are disappointed, at least in our faith, Perry. At least we can go all the way back, not just Russia, before that, there's always been persecution of Christians. How did they live? How did they worship? How was family life? Was always to be with Christ. And a lot of times I will hear from non-Orthodox, I go to church, but where is Christ? I think that's not a criticism. You asked me a question, and even Orthodox could say that. They could say the priest has a beard, the priest has long hair, the priest wears black, the priest wears a big cross. Where is Christ? You know, I will say this. Let me finish this. Yes, I have long hair. Yes, I wear a beard. Yes, all that stuff. It's my heart. It's my heart that I want people to see. And I want people, especially now, you think you get criticism. Just from walking down the street like this, you don't know the questions I get. People are very bold now with their anti-church rhetoric. Mm-hmm. Anti. And I think this is going to sound so ridiculous. All through history, even with our Jewish friends, they were a peculiar people. They were different, not better off. They were, their laws were given by God. Their diet, okay, we're going to say they were under the law, but even the way they dressed. The way I dress is the way I act. The way I dress is the way I act. When I was in the military, when I put on my uniform, I had some rank. I acted that way. It was a reminder. I wonder, a while back I was taking a flight, and this young man sat next to me, a nice young man, really, maybe 35. Had a Hawaiian shirt on and Levi's. And he said, "How are you, Father?" I said, "Oh, I'm fine, thank God. How are you?" He said, "I'm Father Joe." I said, "Father Joe? And what church do you go to?" And he told me. I said, "Shame on you. Are you ashamed to be a priest? Are you ashamed? This doesn't make me better, but are you ashamed to be right out there and say, this is who I am. This is who I represent. Go ahead and judge me. You're going to see me do a lot of things wrong." And he said, "Thank you so much, Father." You see, we just fall in with the times. Well, let's forget Father Joe. Mm-hmm. How about Pastor Jack? Got the 3-piece suit. He's got everything just right. Well, you can't tell him any difference from anybody else. Not that he's better. Yeah. Oh, no, not that he's better. But the church you belong to used to teach holiness. I'm sure they still do. But that called for a different way of life. We lived differently. I needed it in those days. I used to belong to that church, and thank God. I needed these rules. I needed it. You see? And I think even now, when we lower the bar, even as far as the way our pastors dress, "Father, what are you saying?" I'm saying, for gosh sakes, at least look like you are the shepherd. Can anybody tell the difference between the shepherd and the sheep? No. The shepherd's up there with tight pants, checkered pants, white buck shoes, slicked back hair. You can't tell who in the heck he is. Maybe he's a movie star. I don't know. but doesn't it start there with us leaders?
Well, the thing I'm trying to get here is that Christians, no matter what church they sit in, are suffering with depression.
Yes.
They're suffering with overwhelmingness of life. They're looking at the world, it's just upside down.
Yep.
They're looking at their faith and they say, well, what is it I really do believe? Where's God in all this? Why isn't God answering my prayers? So it appears that we are impotent. We can't produce anything.
Perry, my dear brother, the Orthodox Church, it's a hospital. It's not a court of law. Everything we do is to heal everything you just mentioned. And you see very little of that. Do we believe in psychiatrists? Yeah, I guess if you need it. Psychologists, you have one on here, he's very good. Mm-hmm. Daniel Logan. Mm-hmm. He's Orthodox. But I tell you what comes from his heart is orthodoxy. And when he counsels people, it's totally different than anyone else. And I think it's the same thing, Perry. We have, trying to please the people, we said, well, instead of confessing that way, I'll just confess to God. It's a lot easier. Well, instead of having your morning and evening prayers, I'll pray, but I'll pray what I want to from my heart. Of course we do. Well, how do I act? For one thing, depression is one thing. Despondency, we would say, was caused by demons. That's a total giving up on God. It's caused by a demon. And in fact, the prayer that I love, and I think you know it a little bit, we all have bouts of temptation of depression, it takes me about, 12 seconds? Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. And it goes immediately. You see, and if I hadn't, yes, the scriptures, Perry, the Orthodox wrote the scriptures. We're the originators, Christ. And how did men live the scriptures? How did they live when they were depressed? What did they do when the world was falling down around them? They wound up, in church. Church should still look like, feel like, be like God's kingdom on earth. That's why when you come to an Orthodox church, we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. You have all the saints. The music, no entertainment there, but boy, it will touch your heart. The preaching, I just don't get up and say, okay, I'm going to preach on this week. Pastor Perry, this is the gospel this week. I know, but I want to be independent. I want to preach what I want to preach. That's the gospel. It's the same gospel preached all over the world. Perry, we've got to see the church as a hospital, but they've taken away the medicine. Confession is a medicine. Taking the body and blood of Christ is a medicine. It's not a remembrance just only. It's not a mental thing. It's a medicine. I have seen more healing. You're in the ministry. I have seen by God's grace, and only His grace, His mercy. After confession, I have seen, experienced, know, a complete healing. Recently there was a psychologist and had been suffering for years, helping other people, not my parish, I want to make that clear. And so she came and she made confession. And I remember saying, now tell me what's really there. God already knows. I'm a sinner just like you. But there's a grace that comes through the priest. And when the priest touches your head, it's Christ through the priest. And when the priest pronounces these words of forgiveness, it's Christ through the priest. And I did some other things. It is amazing. She said, it's left. For years I've been trying to get rid of this thing. It's left. So, depression, not go to a psychologist, but without confession, without true repentance, without fasting, without self-denial. You talk about humility. How can you be humble without obedience? You can't. They're bound together. Not blind obedience to a tyrant, I would never. But I believe my whole heart, these tools are services. The way we worship, the way we stand instead of sit. It's all there for healing. Whether it's incense, Father, what's that for? The prayers of the saints.
Well, you provoke a lot of thinking, no question about it. And Father Seraphim, again, he is the archpriest of the St. Innocent's Orthodox Church here in Southern Oregon. And you have a website? Is your website still up?
Yes, it's St. Innocent Orthodoxchurch.com.
Okay, St. Innocent's Orthodoxchurch.com.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's continue on. We'll get you back.
Well, if you got the courage.
Oh, hey, you're fun to have around. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for coming in and sharing with us.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.